Thanks so much for joining me for this edition of the Author's Corner, brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM, The Word. I'm Roberta Foster, and today I welcome Jamie Erickson to Author's Corner. She has written the book Overwhelmed Mom, which is published by Moody Publishers, and she'll tell you more about how to find the book at the end of the program. Here's a little bit about Jamie. She can be found encouraging and equipping a growing tribe of mothers all across the globe on the Mom to Mom podcast, through her blog, The Unlikely Homeschool, and in her books, Holy Hugga and Homeschool Bravely. She's been married to her college sweetheart for over 22 years, and together they're raising and launching their 5 second-generation homeschooled kids along the shores of Lake Superior in Minnesota. Jamie, thank you so much for being with us on Author's Corner.
I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So you've written a couple of other books. What was it that inspired you to write one about being an overwhelmed mom?
I think initially because I have been through seasons where I myself was an overwhelmed mom. Also, I'm privileged to travel the country speaking to other mothers around different states at conventions, and I feel lots of questions while I'm there, and without a doubt, the number one question I am asked, or really the statement I hear most often is, help, I'm drowning. I don't know how to come up for air. I think moms in general all feel overworked, understaffed, and sometimes underappreciated.
So you mentioned in the book that being overwhelmed is often a choice. Now, most moms would probably look at you like a deer in the headlights when you if you said that to them. So explain that to us.
Well, you have to understand me. I don't think overwhelm was ever anyone's conscious decision, but I think sometimes, especially in our current cultural moment, we tend to look at what everyone else is doing, all the good things that are out there. Also, as a mother, I'm sure that listeners can attest, mothers are rarely asked to do bad things. We're often asked to do good things. And so we have to weed through all of the good to find the best. And so in maybe not saying no and yes appropriately, and maybe in looking out to what everyone else is doing, thinking it's mine to do, I'm adding and adding and adding more to my plate that God never intended to be there.
Well, at the very beginning, you mentioned having the experience of being an overwhelmed mom. Would you be willing to share a personal story about how your own motherhood overwhelmed you and what you did about it?
Yeah, well, about this time last year, my son, who is currently serving in special operations in the armed forces, was stationed a few states away, and I got a call from a naval hospital saying, your son is here, and he is in very dire condition, and we need next of kin to come and make some decisions on his behalf. And at the time, and he's my second born, but at the time I still had 3 in my home that I was homeschooling daily. I had a business to run. My husband had a business to run, and I had to leave all of my right here life to go and sit at my son's side and make some of those hard, critical choices. Now, I can... The end of the story ends well. God, in His just kindness and mercy, and through the great prayers of many friends and family members, was able to heal my son in miraculous ways that even the doctors are, confounded by. But in the midst of all of that, my life still had to go on. I still had to juggle all the many plates that were in my life. And then when I did finally return to every day, I stepped back in. And, the dishes were still in the sink. The laundry still needed to be done. Even though I felt really emotionally and physically depleted, my everyday life had to continue on. And fortunately, actually, I'll say, by God's kindness and His just leading me throughout several other overwhelming seasons in my life, I had already established some really good, helpful habits and handfuls in my day to allow me to step back into my everyday life and not feel behind, not feel like I had to dig myself out of busy.
Wow. Yeah, that could obviously overwhelm people if they don't have those already in play. So as I was thumbing through your book, I thought, let's take a look at how this is actually presented. And I just really liked the fact that you have it broken up into so many different ways. But at the end of each chapter, you have things to ponder, wisdom from God's Word, and then what you call the mother load. And then you offer lots of great tips for each type of overwhelming time.
Right. I wanted the book mostly to be encouraging words and some words to help us have a mindset shift on our overwhelm, to see it not as a drudgery, to see it as a way to find treasures in the darkness, as Isaiah said. But I also understood that a mom who's drowning needs some practical help, needs hands and feet care right now. So I also wanted to offer that practical piece for her to help her make some small incremental movements on her day right now.
Exactly. Okay, so we're going to learn a lot more from Jamie Erickson in just a moment regarding her book, Overwhelmed Mom, which is published by Moody Publishers, and you're listening to Author's Corner, and I'm Roberta Foster. So we talked about the fact that there are choices being made that impact whether we are being overwhelmed or not. One of those situations is not knowing how to say no. Tell us more about how a mom that has that challenge can learn to overcome it.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge that many, if not all of us, really struggle with, of saying no, especially because as we just shared, most of the things that we're presented with, opportunities, responsibilities, they're all good things, and we have to, determine and decide if this is good, better, or best. I think the main thing that a mom needs to know is that you're actually saying no all the time. It's just that you might not be saying no with intentionality, because every single yes that you give to someone's important something is therefore a no to something else. And usually that something or someone else that we're saying no to is our husband, our children, other responsibilities that we've already committed to. And we have to remember that every yes and no we give is within our power to give, and we have to weigh those out carefully, judiciously, and prayerfully.
Your book invites moms to experience freedom and enjoy the gift of motherhood. Some mothers don't feel like it's a gift. Speak to us about that and how it's truly a gift of God to have these children.
Right. Well, Scripture tells us that children are a gift from the Lord. They are a blessing. And sometimes, if we're all being honest, they can sometimes feel more like a burden than a blessing. But we have to remind ourselves, Proverbs that says death and life are in the power of the tongue. Sometimes we need to just speak those words of truth over us and narrate a better story of our lives. Remind ourselves, my kids are not an occupational hazard. They're not robbing me of purpose. This is the most important work that God has given me to do today. Not the only work, but certainly your work within your own home is very important work. And when we can find purpose in that work, we will also find joy.
And you also talk about living in a season. What does that mean, and what are some practical tips that you have for moms that have to kind of develop that?
Well, I think just like the seasons of creation require us to live differently within each one, eat foods when they're ripe, participate in activities according to the weather, shift our energies for times of growth, times of rest. We'll have to do that same thing throughout our motherhood. And I think so often we sit in the season that God has us in right here, right now, but we long for a different season. When I had young kids at home, I could easily look to the moms with older kids and think, oh, wow, it must be so delightful to not have car seats to buckle in or diapers to change or be able to go out on a date with my husband without having a babysitter. And now that I have adults and teens, I could easily carry some of those same concerns from yesterday into today. I could easily want to have the same amount of control in my children's life that I did back then. And the thing is, Satan really does want us to live in the two places that we cannot change, the past and the future. But God has us right here, right now, for a reason, and we need to be where our feet are. I believe it's in Psalms where it says God orchestrates the boundary lines. The boundary lines have fallen in pleasant places. And those words in the Psalms actually harken back to the Torah when God was dividing the land of Israel and giving it to the different tribes. He was making lot lines and boundary lines and saying, here, tribe of Gath, this is yours. Here, Gad, tribe of Benjamin, this is yours. And he was dividing the land. And it wasn't necessarily to hem the men and women in. It was to keep the cares and concerns of other places out. And it's the same way with our lives. The boundary lines that God has drawn for you in the mothering season you are in right now are not constrictive. They're actually caring.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're running out of time real fast, so I wonder if you would leave us with a couple of practical tips that our listening moms today can implement right now, right out of the gate, to help them to not be as overwhelmed as they may be feeling.
Well, I'll concentrate on mealtime because I think that's sometimes our biggest burden as moms. The day can throw us a lot of curveballs, but if we just remember that those 3 times in the day are consistent and constant, they're going to happen regardless. They happen like clockwork, so they shouldn't take us by surprise. So here are just 2 quick tips that you can take today to help you manage that time better.
Okay.
Instead of making a meal list, make a meal plan. Write down 7 dinners today that you can have sometime throughout the week, and you're not assigning days to them, you're just writing them down as a list. That way, with each day, you can decide, I don't have enough time to make that maybe more complicated meal. I'm going to choose this easier meal. Or maybe I have a freezer meal that I've written out that I can pull out. And then you're just checking that off the list. And so it's got some control to it, but it's also not bossy. And the next suggestion I would give, if making a meal list feels really difficult, deconstruct or reverse engineer a meal list. Instead of writing down what you will have to eat in the coming week, write down what you had today. And do that over the course of 7 days. And at the end of that 7 days, you'll have a 7-day meal list ready to go for maybe not next week, but the next week. And if you continue to do that 2 or 3 times throughout this month, you'll have an entire meal plan for an entire month to pay it forward to yourself next month.
Now, that is a great idea. Just the fact that because you've already done it, all you have to do is write it down and it's available for the next time around.
Right, and just tweak it. You're not adding to it or remaking the list. You're not coming up and inventing a wheel. You're just tweaking it as you go.
Wonderful. All right. So as you were writing this book and you were thinking, now I've got the book, what do I want to accomplish? So what is the main message you want your overwhelmed moms to take away from this book?
Well, I hope they see that overwhelm is a good indicator of misaligned priorities. You're chasing hard after some things that are not yours to chase. I also hope they see that you cannot be all for all because only God is all.
All righty. Well, today I've been talking with Jamie Erickson about her book, Overwhelmed Mom. And so before you leave us, Jamie, how can people find out more about this book, your other books, podcast? Give us the whole works.
Yeah, well, you can join me on my website, jamieerickson.com, Jamie, Erickson with an O, and that is where you'll find all my books and my podcasts and anything that I have to offer.
All righty. Again, the book is Overwhelmed Mom by Jamie Erickson and published by Moody Publishers. We appreciate them sending us a copy of the book. Jamie, it's been delightful talking with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. It was a joy.
And to our listeners, if you missed any part of today's interview or would like to hear it again, you can now find it on your favorite podcast platform or through kneo.org. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Roberta Foster on the Author's Corner. Join me again next time.